It's happening again, Michael.
No.
It's happening again. I can't
Trump's
believe
president again.
Last year I had to change around so many gosh darn movies because of the coronavirus pandemic. The studios didn't know what they were doing. They were moving movies left, right, and centre. And so the corresponding movies that we were going to review, that meant I also had to move them as well. And now it's all the same. Fucking No Time to Die is now being released in October. Godzilla vs. Kong is being moved up till March. Can't they just fucking stick with one thing? I'm gonna have to go through this again. God,
Yeah.
I hate life, man. Yes, I know it'll only take me 15 minutes maximum, but my God, it's annoying. You've got it all nicely set up, and then this happens.
Yeah, they have no regard for retrospective movie review channels and their desire to schedule their reviews to line up with the release of major films. It's like, you would think with CinemaSins having so many subscribers and them being such a fan of this tactic, that they would have some clout to help us out, help out the little guy. We're counting on you to save film criticism, CinemaSins.
Well, I'd argue they already have done that. Yes. We're asking them to go above and beyond once more. Yeah. Right.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke. And this week we are celebrating the Oscar season. It's going to be a bit later than usual, and that gives us plenty of time to watch all of the films that are nominated for Best Picture. And we're going to be starting off with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Sure thing, Michael. So, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a 2019 comedy drama film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, and not a fable by, I don't know, who wrote the fables, back in the day? Was it Aesop? He was the guy.
Yeah. But I think it's pronounced Aesop, even though it's spelled Aesop.
Shut up. The movie features a large ensemble cast led by Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, and Margot Robbie. Also stars Emile Hirsch, Margaret Qualley, Timothy Olyphant, Austin Butler, Dakota Fanning, Bruce Dern, and what's my name? Al Pacino. It's a whole new game. Al Pacino.
I love that film.
You want creamy goodness? I'm your friend.
Say hello to my chocolate blend.
There we go. We can save the full rendition for the Jack and Jill review.
I actually really want that. When is Happy Gilmore? I've forgotten his actual name. Adam Sandler's next film.
I don't know. Well, there's the thing. He's probably on hold because of the coronavirus. The only reason why he does films is so he can enjoy himself with his friends. Now he can't do that really with COVID. There's all these protocols. He's probably sacked it off for now.
Yeah, the real victim of lockdown.
Yes. The release date of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was July the 26th, 2019 in the United States, and August the 14th, 2019 in the UK. Interestingly, Tarantino wanted the release date to be right in line with the murders. The Manson murders, and but apparently that wasn't. He changed it out of respect, but he didn't bother with the UK changing the date because it's literally as close to the murders as you could get. Maybe a week earlier, and that would be perfect. So August the 14th, 2019 for the UK. And Michael, can you guess the budget for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Well, I've fallen afoul of failing to appreciate the wages that actors command before. So while I don't think there was obviously necessarily any huge special effects in this film, there were some big actors, so I'm going to go for 100 million.
You know what, Michael? That is a very good guess. I swear you were going to lowball this. I thought for sure you were going to go too
I've learned my lesson about actors.
Thank you. I've been abusing you for weeks and months and years about this, and it's finally got through. There you go. Abuse works. The budget was 90 to 96 million. Fantastic guess, Michael. Really nailed it. Only 4 million off. Can you give me the box office for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I don't know. I think Quentin Tarantino films make quite a lot, but not Avengers money. So let's just split the difference and say 400 million.
Again, Michael, all these years. I'm serious. All these years of abuse have paid off.
Oh yeah.
Because you didn't go it's a very niche movie. I don't know. I guess maybe it was a bit easy because you're right. It's a Tarantino movie, but it ain't Avengers, so it would be around the 400 million mark. The actual amount is 374. Oh wow! So again, a very very good guess. So you've done well there, Michael. But the question is, did Quentin Tarantino do as well as you when making this movie? Can you tell me, or in your opinion, Michael, whether you like this movie or not?
Well, I certainly liked it. I mean, Quentin Tarantino's never done a bad movie. I'd say I liked it. The nuances of that we'll get into. What do you think?
Yeah, did I like this? Yes, I guess so. Yes, and it's not really because I admired the film so much so. It's more that I admire its existence, and therefore I admire the film. The fact that it exists, the fact that I can watch this. That's what I guess I like about it more than anything else. You know, this I wouldn't really want to watch it again. You know, it's not. Oh yeah, can't wait to watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood once more. But it's the fact that this movie was created and I can see it, and you know, it was made at all. That I do really like when filmmakers take risks. You know, I love it when they. But that's the thing. It's not really a risk with Tarantino, or do something different. I guess would be the best thing. And for me, I mean, how different is this movie compared to other movies that grossed 374 million? I'd say quite a bit different. So yeah, we'll get into all the nuances, like you say, later, Michael. But first, let's get on to nitpicks. How many do you have?
I've got none.
I've got 2. So
okay.
I guess that means I'll be going first.
Yes, and I'll go second.
Yes. So first nitpick. See, I'm not sure if this was a nitpick, but I put it in there anyway. So it's quite an ironic one when the director is talking to Leonardo DiCaprio, who of course is playing Rick Dalton. The director was talking about, this is when he's in his trailer near the beginning of the movie. Rick Dalton's hair is being discussed, and you know, he's got it like down almost over his eyes, over his forehead. And his hair's been discussed, and then literally in the next shot, like, his hair is slicked back. Like, it went from, it's down near his face to slick back, and, the change is just instant. There's no footage of him, like, moving his hand back. And then if you look from the shots behind DiCaprio, so, you're not looking at his face, you can see the hair is still, like, dangling above his eyes and his forehead. But then reverse shot, you see his face again. It's all slicked back.
Yeah, so there's not no shot continuity.
Exactly. The shot continuity is not there, but it's such an obvious mistake.
It must have been on purpose.
It must have been on purpose. That's the thing. I have watched the Red Letter Media review of this. I expected, one of those guys would pick this up. They didn't, because they kind of noticed these things, and I did, and I was like, I was expecting them maybe to expand on it more, whether it was a mistake, or it was like an inside joke thing. Tarantino was like, hey, this is what used to happen back in the old days. There was no shot continuity in some of these shots, so let's just sprinkle that in there. But yeah, it was, and the fact that they were talking about his hair and then it happened makes me think, it was an inside joke kind of thing. It was a little reference there.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, so I don't know if it's a nitpick, but I thought I might as well put it there. And my second nitpick is it's got to be the feet. Like,
oh, sorry, yeah, that's a good one actually, because I did pick up on that would be my lit pick.
But the thing is, everybody knows he puts feet in his, like, it's a meme. Like, he puts feet in his movies. And then he really goes at it in this movie. You got Margot Robbie's feet, you get the Manson girl's feet, you got just random shots of people's feet everywhere.
And the feet are like right up against the windshield with the Manson girl.
Yeah,
it's
I know.
Really like four.
But that's the thing. It's like, is he doing it? He must know.
Yeah.
And he's like, just saying, fuck you, I can put as many feet as I like in my movie. And that's fine.
That's
I guess.
The theme.
But then the nitpick is, I guess, well, it kind of, every time you see the feet, it's like the meme from Tarantino and feet, and it takes you out of the movie. It's
I found that actually.
Yeah, it's like, he's doing it again. And he's just like, please stop with the feet, man. Just tone it. Just you can have one foot, and Why is Margot Robbie got dirty feet? Why is she putting her feet up in the cinema? Why?
That's the weird thing, because he has them in, because I mean, obviously I think about Kill Bill and how there's the scene of her feet, but in the context of that, she's learning to get feeling back in her legs because she's just been unconscious or whatever, and so like there's a reason for it. Whereas in this film, like you say, the feet are there not only in a way where there's no reason for them to be there, but in a case where it's arguably silly that her feet would be there. Like, how many people just put their feet up against a windshield in a car?
Well, no, to be fair, that's the Manson girls. They're fucking weird, so whatever. Yeah. You can give an exception for that.
Although actresses are weird too. You know what they're like.
Good point.
So I guess
But
he
that's
just
the thing.
needs to make films about weird people now.
I've never seen anyone do that in a cinema, or I've seen any
No,
movie
yeah.
that's just completely weird thing to do. And
Yeah.
you know, like that's my only thing. He's like, I can put as many feet as I like in my movies, and you can't do anything about it. And yeah,
Yeah.
and that's
It's weird because it's almost like he's trying to get us in on his fetish, and just like it's kind of creepy, you know. Like imagine if someone kept being like, "Hey, want to see my film about women in adult baby outfits? You know, they're wearing diapers and sucking pacifiers."
I mean, it's a bit more
identical.
normal than that. But anyway, let's move on to the actual movie now. Now the nitpicks are out the way. So, just a bit of background on this. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was, of course, nominated for Best Picture at the 2020 Oscars, which is why we are reviewing it. Like Michael said at the beginning, it is now Oscar season, the most wonderful time of the year. And so I thought we'd kick off with this because, you know, it's about Hollywood and, you know, the Oscars and Hollywood. You know, this movie is about the glamour of Hollywood and, you know, the Oscars are glamorous and all that. So it makes sense to start our Oscar watch with this movie, which is specifically praising the kind of, you know, ceremonies that the Oscars are known for. You know, the prestige, the extravaganzas, etc. And Tarantino, of course, loves all that stuff, particularly in the 60s. That he makes that clear in this movie. But yeah, let's just go through some of the nominations this movie got in the 2020 Oscars. Let me see. Among its various accolades, the film was chosen by the American Film Institute and National Board of Review as one of the top 10 films of the year. And it received 10 nominations at the 92nd Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Production Design. And it also won Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy at the Golden Globe Awards. And Brad Pitt actually did win Best Supporting Actor. He won that Oscar. And this movie also did win Best Production Design, which I am not at all surprised at. Those two awards, well, the second award in particular, yeah, that completely makes sense. And yeah, Brad Pitt also won Best Supporting Actor at the Golden Globes as well. So yeah, this movie did well. You know, picked up a nomination for Best Picture, didn't win it, but yeah, I don't think anyone really expected it to. And yeah, got a couple of Oscars along the way. So yeah, this movie has a pretty good reputation. Let's get into the plot now, Michael. Do you want to do that?
Yes.
So, set in 1969, so 50 years ago exactly, when, of course, the movie was released in 2019. Set in 1969, Los Angeles, the film follows a fading character actor and his stunt double as they navigate the rapidly changing film industry with the looming threat of the Tate LaBianca murders hanging overhead. It features, quote, multiple storylines in a modern fairy tale tribute to the final moments of Hollywood's golden age. Indeed. Yeah, I guess that's what it is more than anything, just a tribute. That sums it up very, very well. But let's get into the... well, actually, Michael, let's talk about the fact that what this movie is, because I find that interesting in itself. This was a big release movie. It's, you know, quite a unique movie, like we said, and it's from a well-known director, Tarantino. Is there any director more famous than Tarantino? Maybe
Steven Spielberg. Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else?
Ralph Bakshi.
Ralph Bakshi. Shut the
Ralph Bakshi. Yes.
Oh, God.
He's my guy.
It's pathetic. Anyway, so Tarantino. We're ranking number 2 as the most well-known directors in the world. And the thing is, Tarantino, with his movies, he can go against whatever trend is currently being followed by movie studios and can make a lot of money off that. And that's the thing. He can make his own unique movie, his own thing, and it works. It gets millions and millions of dollars. Now, other directors can do that, obviously, but they ain't grossing $374 million. And this is pointed out again in the Red Letter Media review, and I think it's entirely accurate. It just feels so different to what movie. And I know with COVID, things are now changing rapidly. Who knows where the movie industry is going to land? Who knows what the future is of movies in general? But yeah, it did. Like they were talking about, yeah, it felt like an end of an era, this Tarantino movie. And yeah, they were more right than they knew, because of course, just a few months later, COVID hit. But yeah, it's isn't it nice, Michael? Isn't it nice that you can have this unique movie from a well-known director and everybody, you know, talks about it and it grosses, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. Isn't that nice? I think that's nice. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, I think obviously it could be pointed out that the reality is that there are plenty of people making these interesting movies, so it's kind of like I guess it's a shame that you need the name recognition. I think it's a similar thing with Christopher Nolan, even though he's not as famous. Like I remember there was one year where every single film was either a sequel or a remake, except for Interstellar. And it was kind of like the point people were making is you needed to have Christopher Nolan in order for it to be a successful kind of film that was not a big franchise thing. And obviously, yeah, Quentin Tarantino, he has the clout to make these kind of films, and I'm glad he does. But in a way, I guess it's unfortunate in a wider sense that you do need the clout in order to make films like this.
Yeah.
But, I'm glad that there is somebody who does have that.
You mentioned Nolan, and that's a good point. Nolan's the only one who can really compete with Tarantino in this, but I mean, Nolan's movies are kind of like big blockbuster stuff. Like, I mean, they are, Tenet, I haven't seen Tenet. Apparently it's quite confusing, and it's, but that's the thing. It's like, it's a big action movie, Tenet.
Yeah, I would say, so Christopher Nolan, he just makes thrillers that are, you'd say, like, complicated. So he makes but they are ultimately thrillers. Whereas with Quentin Tarantino, and obviously other directors as well, it's kind of, they make art films that actually play on the use of film as a medium.
Yeah, like Tenet is like, it's unique. Obviously, it's not based off anything. It's his own work, and that's something, of course, to be admired. But it's more what you'd expect out of a big summer blockbuster than, like, say, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah,
far more, and that is, again, and so Nolan is close, but he's not Tarantino in terms of not how good they are, in terms of making these different movies that just gross a massive amount. So let's get, I guess, into the actual plot of the movie. And well, I already said the plot, but let's dive into it right now. The first thing I noticed when watching this movie, Michael, is this movie does not have a narrative thrust, I believe is the term. You have three separate characters. I know Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth know each other, but essentially there's three different characters doing their own thing, and there's not a lot of tension in the movie, just a lot of, I guess, interesting, kind of indulgent scenes, if you will, for the best part of 2 hours. And things get good when Brad Pitt goes to the Manson Ranch. But yeah, it really doesn't get into gear like how a traditional movie would function for 2 hours and 15 minutes. Really, that's when like actual stuff kind of happens. Because even when Brad Pitt goes to the Manson Ranch, it's a good scene. I really like it, but then it gets kind of just forgotten like 6 months later, and there's no consequences off that. So yeah, that's the thing. It's no narrative thrust, and it's a structure which, again, it's very different. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's almost borderline impressive to be able to write so much nothing. Obviously, we did Fargo, and it's something which I was thinking about with the Coen brothers too. The ability to just write scenes which don't really have a purpose, and yet are still enjoyable and still entertaining. And I do think it's something which is nice, and you obviously don't see it as much in action films, fantasy adventure films, or whatever, because the dialogue is not utilitarian, as the kids are saying. Utilitarian dialogue, it's all about advancing the plot. The reason people only say what they need to say to get, to communicate things. And in a sense, you could argue, well, that's the real skill, writing dialogue that achieves something for the narrative. And yet at the same time, there is also a skill in being able to write dialogue which doesn't really bring anything to the table except that it feels real. And certainly, like, a lot of the scenes in this film just feel real, even though they actually, ultimately it doesn't serve to advance the film at all, or really even form any sort of plot. And it is interesting. And it's, certainly, like you kind of already said, this isn't a film that you necessarily want to watch over and over again, because it is sort of like, at the end of it, you think, nothing really happened. But it is fun.
Apart from the end, of course.
Yeah. But it is fun when you watch it. I almost wonder about like an edited down version of this film, because it is like, it's so long considering how much.
That, I mean, we'll get onto it right now. Let's talk about Rick Dalton, because you have so many scenes where he's, just... It goes on for quite a while, and then at the end there's no payoff, which is fine, because the scenes are entertaining in itself. But anyway, Rick Dalton, of course, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, very unhappy about his career trajectory. It's a standard archetype, as is explained, in the book he's reading. The book is the exact same character as Rick Dalton, this washed-up guy who's not as good as he once was, and he's struggling to cope with that. And you have, that's the thing. It's a lot of indulgent scenes when he's talking to that 8-year-old girl, for instance, and when he's acting the long shot when he's talking in the bar to the new star of the show he's on, and there's the owner of the bar who's Mexican says, "Please do not hurt my daughter," and he can't get the line, and that's fun. It's entertaining. I like it, but it just doesn't go anywhere, which is kind of weird to watch. And then you have all these scenes again, which I love. I love them, where he's doing little bits in the movies. When he's battling the Nazis, and I love. Did you see they had like the Nazi patterns on the banister in front of the curtain? He was
yes, I did. Yeah,
I just love that. It's just great. It's fucking great. But it's schlocky and stuff, but it's fun. And his scene from The Great Escape as well, even though it was imagined, I believe it was fun. And I like fun, but that's it. It doesn't like he doesn't do anything. His character arc, I guess, is he's upset, then he has this great performance, then he's happy again, but then he goes to Italy, which he would have done anyway. He was probably going to do that, and he considered that a failure. And then he gets back to his house, and then he has the thing with the Manson kids, and then he gets invited up to Sharon Tate's house with a couple of other people, and who knows where his career goes from there? Because like you said at the beginning, like all I need is to be at a pool party, and I could be in the next Polanski movie, and maybe that happens. But it's just it's a very, again, like Tarantino's passion is shown throughout this movie, and he's very interested in this kind of this character Rick Dalton, and that's it. It's just examining him, and that's pretty much it. Anything else to say, Michael?
No, basically, I did like. So obviously, there is kind of in a weird way, this almost has one of Quentin Tarantino's quaintest endings, and by quaint I mean almost small scale and nice and charming. And I say that about the absolute ending. Of course, there's a bit the film's climax is slightly different, but the way the film ends is obviously Rick Dalton gets told, by Roman Polanski's wife, "Hey, do you want to come up and meet my friends?" Which of course is harkening back to what he said about, I just need a pool party. I could be in a Roman Polanski film. So it's actually strange in a way that this film does have that, because that's kind of that hint of nice things to come. It's the sort of thing you would often get in a cute little feel-good film. Like, oh, look, maybe things won't be so bad for him. Maybe he'll get to be in a Roman Polanski film. And obviously, I find it interesting how it ends there. But overall, I agree with you. It's obviously dealing with this transition from Westerns to this other stuff. Obviously, it talks about the spaghetti Westerns, which everyone knows about. And I am a bit confused, actually, why it is that he seems so dismissive of spaghetti Westerns when this... Because admittedly, when I first started watching this, I thought it would be like in the 50s, but it was in the 60s, which obviously would be after things like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and all those Sergio Leone films. So I'm not sure why he's so dismissive of Italian-directed Western films, but whatever. I guess he just... What did he say? He didn't like it because they all spoke their own language.
Yeah, it's not Hollywood, is it? Maybe that's it. It's not Hollywood. If he wants to be like in the next Polanski movie, he's aiming for those heights, then he's not going to reach them if he's doing movies in Italy, is he? By
the way, actually, there is a Sergio Leone film called Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh, fascinating! That's good. It's good. It's good knowledge there, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's talk about Brad Pitt's character, who's Cliff Booth, Leonardo DiCaprio's stuntman. This no-nonsense guy who killed his wife and got away with it. And
really weirdly, like kind of not followed up, or just like an isolated thing in a way.
Apparently, it's inspired by another killing. Like, the thing is, the relationship between Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt's characters, they were also inspired by, I can't remember which actors they were inspired by, but the actor and the stuntman. But, it's all inspired by everything. So that was inspired by something as well. He has a great fight with Bruce Lee, picks up this hippie girl, and I wrote this down, this is good. When he asks her, "How old are you?" And I put, I know DiCaprio wouldn't care about her age.
No, he would. She could be too old for him.
Yeah, but obviously she wouldn't. I guess so. And then of course they go to the Manson Ranch and they have that scene in the Manson Ranch. Just brilliant. I don't know how long it goes on for. I feel like it goes on for like 20 minutes, but it's just brilliant. The tension, and you have the knowledge of what that place is, and it's great. And of course at the end, he beats up one there and he beats up several of them later. And again, it's the same thing. It's it's not really. It's less an examining of the character that, compared to DiCaprio's character. You know, he's just kind of there. You know, he just does stuff. He's fine with his lot in life. You know, not really interesting at all. But at the same time, kind of interesting too.
Yeah,
because of his backstory.
Yeah, because he finds himself in interesting places, and obviously the backstory aspect is interesting. I guess the thing is they sort of establish him as a bit of a badass, as the kids are saying.
Yeah,
and I agree with you. I liked the scene at the mansion ranch because of how intense it was, and there was that sense of like something could happen, and
trepidation.
It was
yes.
and it was that suggestion building the tension. By the way, did you ever play Grand Theft Auto 5?
Of course I did. What do I
There's
look like?
did you ever so there's like a commune in the mountains?
Yeah,
I don't know if you and there's
underneath
like
a bridge.
Yes, and there's like some I don't know, creepy hillbillies there, and they'll shoot at you if you shoot at them, which to be fair, is all power to them. But that's what that made me think of.
I mean, that was understandable, to be honest. Like, if you shoot at them, I imagine they would shoot at you back.
But I always when the first time I watched this film, I was like, man, I really want to play that Grand Theft Auto just so I can go shoot people. And then this time I felt it too. I don't know, something about just the idea. I guess in a way that speaks to the fact that you watch it and you're like, oh, it's so exciting. But then obviously the caveman part of your brain is like, but I wish they had a proper good shootout. But obviously I'm just saying that from the serious film appreciation version of me. It's like, it was really well done tension.
Did you think Brad Pitt deserved Best Supporting Actor?
That is a good question. You know what, actually I'm annoyed because I know what it was. I really liked him. See, this is jumping ahead just a bit, but it's still about his character. I liked him being high. That was like, I was thinking to myself,
I think I like every character when they're high. I mean, it's just fun, to see them high.
And I think also it's like it requires, obviously, fake drunk acting is a very obvious way to tell that somebody's not a good actor. Like, if you watch like a bad teen film or obviously horror film, you'll get like characters who are supposed to be drunk and they're obviously not drunk, and you can kind of tell because they're acting in the way that like an idiot would act if they were pretending to be drunk. And I imagine it's a similar thing with like pretending to be high. Like it's a very easy thing to do badly. And I think, I've never been around somebody on acid, but I get the impression that it would pretty much be how Brad Pitt was reacting.
That's great. You haven't been around, but you think it's accurate. That's wonderful.
It seemed, let's just say it seemed authentic. I was sold on the idea. And I will say, like, for a lot of the film, I was thinking, like, I do remember at several points, it was particularly, I think it was when he was giving the woman to the ranch, I was thinking to myself, I don't know if he's done anything thus far that's made me think, oh, he's a good actor. Like, it seemed like a bit of a weird role because it was sort of just like, he was just there. There was nothing he was doing that made him perceptibly different from Brad Pitt the person, because obviously when somebody's given wins Best Actor, it's usually because you're like, oh, that person doesn't seem
Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, but Best Supporting, Best Actor, whatever. You'd be like, oh, because they don't seem like the actual actor, they seem like a character. Mm-hmm. And for most of this film, I was thinking, does this guy really seem like a character? It kind of just seems like Brad Pitt. But then, when he was high, I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty convincing. It was all like, I don't know, it was just, when he was laughing to himself, I enjoyed it.
Okay.
And I guess they enjoyed it too.
That's good.
To be fair, I don't know who else was nominated. I might try and find out, even though I probably haven't seen the films. Actually, I think I probably have. I'm going to check.
Go, you go and do that, Michael. You go and do that. I'll just say, I think Brad Pitt, again, he did shine towards the latter half of the movie, and it was really, really good. I enjoyed it. And I think from my recollection, there wasn't like a standout Best Supporting Actor nominee from the 2020 Oscars. There wasn't someone who you were like, yes, they're going to win it. So it was kind of like, I guess Brad Pitt, yeah, sure. I mean, it's not like he didn't deserve it. It was just, it doesn't jump off the screen as you would maybe expect. But they got to give the award out every year.
I'd probably give it to either Anthony Hopkins as Pope Benny in The Two Popes, mm-hmm. or I also think, the thing is, okay, so Tom Hanks was Fred Rogers, which, I mean, do you remember that? That was A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood thing. And so I've seen that film, and I will say Tom Hanks did seem a lot like Fred Rogers, but there is the issue that Tom Hanks, as a person, already seems a bit like Fred Rogers. Like, you kind of they basically got, a really nice guy who's famous for being a really nice guy to play a really nice guy who's famous for being a really nice guy.
Brad Pitt did to Angelina Jolie, though.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just making a joke about how the character killed his wife.
It's
like Brad Pitt. It's the same.
Yes, I get it. Yeah. Okay, that's good. I mean, to be fair, Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move on now to talk about Margot Robbie. So again,
Yeah.
she
Look,
is.
I have to say, is it not pronounced? I feel like you're doing like Gal Gadot used to be called Gal Gadot, and then everyone realized it's actually Gal Gadot. But I'm pretty sure Margot Robbie is still Margot Robbie and not
What am I
Margot.
saying?
You're saying Margot,
Margot.
as if you're saying like so. Like obviously, this is my theory. I think because obviously, like I say, Gal Gadot. Like for a while, people were calling her Gal Gadot, and everyone was like, and then everyone realized it's not Gal
It
Gadot, it's
doesn't
Gal
make
Gadot.
sense. Yeah, I've heard, but it doesn't make sense. Margot, because there's a T at the end.
Yeah, I don't
So
know
why is that T there if it's not pronounced Margot? Why is it there?
Yeah, to be fair though, I
Have
think
you
it's
ever heard of a
because
silent
Margot
T?
Margot sounds bad. Like so, I do think Margot sounds
Well,
nicer.
then her
so
parents
that's
should
why.
have fucking named her that. Then
I know, yeah, that's true.
Idiots.
Parents- yeah, to be fair, it's like Margot. What even is that as a name? I've never ever heard of
I don't
anybody
know.
called
People have weird names,
Margot.
but I'm not going to pronounce it in a different way.
Good, yeah.
It's hey, if you didn't
can do
want
it.
your name to be pronounced like that, you shouldn't have spelled it like that.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Margot Robbie, throughout she plays Sharon Tate. Throughout the movie, she is there in the background. You know, she goes to see her own movies. She doesn't have one interaction with Brad Pitt or DiCaprio either, apart from right at the end with Leo.
Yeah,
She's just on her own, and yeah, it doesn't feel like she was involved in the movie. She was just there because she was Sharon Tate, and of course she's involved with the Manson murders, so she has to be in this movie if you're doing a movie about the Manson murders, and I guess that's fine, but you don't need to have her be that prominent, I guess. But if she is that prominent, then why does she do almost nothing? That's what I was thinking. Why does she just like walk around and dance? But this was a question actually after the premiere. A journalist, this is from Wiki, a journalist mentioned to Tarantino that Margot Robbie had few lines, and Tarantino responded, "I reject your hypothesis." Remember that line?
yeah.
That's a great line.
Sorry, I was about to say Quentin Tarantino. He hates being asked questions.
I know.
That's what he just hates it.
He's a self-confident man.
Yeah, for somebody who likes films, he really doesn't like talking about his own films.
He doesn't like being criticised. I don't know about. Yeah, there's a kind of a different thing.
Bloody directors.
I know, right? Robbie elaborated. I think the moments on screen show those wonderful sides of Tate could be adequately done without speaking. I did notice actually a couple of times that her Australian accent did come through. When she entered the bookstore, there's a couple of words she says which aren't that American. I will say that.
Yeah, I also thought it was in poor taste for her to keep calling everyone cunts.
You fucking can't.
Stop trying to murder me, you bloody cunt cultist.
It's awful. You don't deserve to do accents.
Your one bloody sounded brummy at some points.
It definitely didn't. It definitely didn't.
What the? I can
see, that's the thing.
do.
It sounded completely different.
It sounded literally. You didn't realize it, but I will play.
I think the
them next to
moments
each
on
other.
screen show those wonderful swords of Tate. Is it the swords? I mean, that's
that was it. Yeah, sides. That was.
I mean, they pronounce some different accents. Pronounce the word similar. You know, that's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. Although I do remember that time when in 28 Days Later, when there was that girl from Liverpool, the actress was from Liverpool, and she sounded Australian, and it was because she was trying to do like a Cockney accent. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
She was like, don't worry about it. I'm not tired.
So Quentin Tarantino, this is back to the journalist's question, stated, I thought it would be both touching and pleasurable, and also sad and melancholy, to just spend a little time with Sharon Tate, just existing. I wanted you to see Sharon a lot. Of course, this is the thing. In real life, she died. In this movie, she doesn't. So in this movie, it seemed kind of pointless. But in real life, if she died, this makes more sense. And this goes to the issue with the movie as well. Like, if the alternate ending doesn't happen, it makes sense. But the fact that the alternate ending happens, it's just like, well, what's the point in her being there then? If she's alive and she has a baby and everything's fine, and that's my view on it basically.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into historical inaccuracy in a second, or a little while. I was thinking that because it is like, she is just. I mean, like you already said, she is just around. I thought like when Brad Pitt was fixing the aerial or something on the house, and you saw Margot Robbie in her room
dancing,
dancing. I was thinking, oh, she's going to see Brad Pitt and be turned on by him.
That doesn't happen.
And I was like, yeah, that's going to be how they interact. And I was like, oh, just nothing.
That's the thing. You can't do anything with her like that because then that's disrespecting her because she died.
Yeah, that's
so you're calling her a cheater then as well. And that's the thing. You're really, if you go down this path, it's just like, well, I get what you're trying to do, but it really doesn't make sense if you're just watching the movie.
Because that idea of having it be like, oh, because she's a person who died, you need to spend some time with her to see her as that person.
But then she doesn't.
Who died. Yeah, and also like I would say, that a lot of films that have the characters have a story, you see them as a person. And I would say that, if the logic is supposed to be because she didn't have a story, and
it's
because
a tribute.
Yeah. I see her as more authentically a person. I don't know if that's true. I think, but yeah, I get you. And obviously, I will talk about the alternate ending a bit, because I do agree with you that does kind of make that whole point a bit weird about like.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on now. So 2 hours into the movie, about 2 hours in, it cuts to 6 months later. Rick and Cliff have been in Italy. And they're returning. He's made several movies. He's, an Italian movie star now. He's got a wife, so he's coming back to Los Angeles. The time of the events, then the narrator is starting to record these times. So it's like 11:04. This happens. Like 11:52. This happens, etc. So something is going to happen. It's building up to something. They go to restaurants, and it just seems like a normal day. But obviously, because the time is being recorded, it isn't. And I do like that. The movie is building up to something. And this is, I guess, where we have to talk about the ending and the Manson murderers specifically. The weird thing is, if you know what it is building up to, then you are more surprised than if you don't know. But that's the thing. Oh shit. I mean, maybe you know about Tarantino's alternate endings. Like you've seen Inglourious Basterds, for instance. Yeah. But let's not assume that. You expect Sharon Tate to be murdered. Oh, it doesn't happen. You're more surprised. But the thing is, if you don't know what happens, you're not really quite surprised, of course, because it's just it's violence at the end of the movie, but also you don't know what the movie is building up to. It's just building up to this random fight scene in Rick Dalton's house, and then there's no payoff because it's just these characters beating up some hippies, which I guess is okay. It's fun. But what's there? Why do I care about that? It just seems like quite a weird ending if you don't have any knowledge. And that's the thing. This movie it is built upon the fact that your enjoyment of it is defined by if you know, or maybe not your enjoyment, but the maximum enjoyment is defined by if you know about the Manson murders, and they're pretty famous. Of course they are. Charles Manson's one of the most famous serial killers ever, but they happened like 50 years ago. This movie is the 50th anniversary of what happened, and I think, is it possible that you could go to this movie and just not know what happened? Here's
Luke, you know what, Luke, I'm going to jump in and say, honestly, this is what the first time I watched the film, which was a while ago, was before the Oscars of when it was nominated, because I wanted to watch it in advance. I picked up on the fact that it was an allusion to the Manson family. I did not know. So I knew about the Manson family. I knew about them being murderers who kill people, but I didn't know about this specific event. And therefore, like when it happened, I was like, oh, this is like an allusion to the Manson family. Like it's kind of because obviously they call the guy Charlie, and I was like, oh yeah, like it's like Charles Manson, but they don't ever explicitly identify Charles Manson. So I was thinking it'd be like a kind of, in the same way that Rick Dalton is obviously kind of a amalgam of multiple different classic Hollywood actors. I was thinking, oh, this is like an amalgam of like Crazy or an allusion to this. So yeah, I didn't know about the specific event, and I didn't realize it was trying to portray a specific event when I first watched it. So I can be whatever you're about to say. I'll tell you if I agree.
I was just going to basically say, like I said, your enjoyment, the maximum enjoyment you can get out of this movie is defined by whether you know about the Manson family murders. And I was thinking, while I was watching this, because I know about it, because I'm me, I'm knowledgeable about everything. I knew about it already, and then I watched Mindhunter. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, you've mentioned that to us. You mentioned it to us before because it was about, you were talking about how it shows that the police don't know what they're talking about. That was the context you mentioned it in.
Something like that. Yeah, but basically, this guy goes around interviewing serial killers. And basically, this is when the term serial killer was invented. By these people who were going around interviewing these serial killers and saying, why did you do this? Why are you doing these weird things, which are just totally alien to normal life? And Charles Manson is referenced. Police departments apparently around the country had a very negative reaction to that, just because of what happened and the fact that they really didn't know. They didn't have any suspects for like a month, and I read up on Wikipedia, it was like September '69 when the people who actually killed like Sharon Tate and everyone else were arrested. I had knowledge of that, and then I think in the second series they actually interview Charles Manson in the show, But yeah, I knew about what. Yeah, it was crazy to. I can't remember the first time I knew about it, but yeah, he was just like, just walked in and murdered these random people in a random house. That was and that's what Mindhunter went on about. It was just like these people, just it was just completely a random act of violence. No motive apparently. And I was thinking again, because that was my knowledge of it. Well, I had a couple of friends who went to see this movie, and of course, they're around my age. Had my cultural upbringing as well, so that they kind of know the stuff I do, of course, because why wouldn't they? And I was thinking, when they went to watch the movie, did they know about the Manson murders? Because I think if you ask, because obviously it's an American thing, I'm British. If you ask the people I grew up around, do you know what happened in with Charles Manson? They've probably heard of the name, but they wouldn't actually know what happened. And even if you did know about what happened, like kind of like you, Michael, like even if you did know about what happened, then you might not actually know what happened at the end potentially, because it's like, because the name Charlie Manson, I don't think it's ever mentioned, like his full name. I don't think Charles Manson is his full name is ever mentioned.
I don't think it is. Yeah.
They reference Charlie, and there's no, unless you obviously know about this case quite.
This is the Charlie's Angels Full Throttle sequel.
Yeah,
sequel we've been demanding.
Yeah, it's quite a leap then. Charles. Oh yeah, he killed us. Oh yeah. I mean, like maybe you could figure it out, but not necessarily. And that's why I'm like, I don't know, because it must be, like I said, it's a super famous case. It's really, really famous, and particularly in America, I imagine it's even more famous than over here. But yeah, I mean, like, did you? Well, you said you didn't really get it first time, did you?
Yeah. I would say yeah. So for the first time I watched it, I was just like, that. I just thought it was a bit random. Like, obviously, like I said, I was like, oh, they're supposed to be crazy hippie murderers like the Mansons. I worked that out, but I was like, why did that happen? Why did that happen in this film right there? And obviously I wasn't too shocked because the film thus far had not exactly been conventional, so I wasn't sat there being like, what a strange ending, I'm baffled. But I wasn't sat there like, oh, I wasn't sat there thinking, oh, so it ties into this event, because obviously I didn't realize there was an event. And when I realized afterwards that it did tie into a specific event, and then watched it back knowing it tied into a specific event, I was like, oh, that's cool.
Did you recognize the road? Or the Cielo Drive?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah, that's the thing that they show when Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth first drive up it. There's a panning shot and it says Cielo Drive. That's the road they're driving up. And that was when it first triggered in my mind, like, oh, Cielo Drive. Where's that from? That's the Manson murders.
Oh, okay. Yes, I didn't know that.
So that was when I first. It went on, I probably would have got it. But that's what triggered for me. Okay, this is going to be about the Manson murderers to some extent. Yeah, Cielo Drive. It's a very famous drive.
The fact the film assumes the knowledge of the audience to an extent where I think it arguably does make it less entertaining, in that I think, given that the Manson murders are so famous, a film that kind of deals with them and shows them would be an interesting film. But obviously, and like I say, a lot of the stuff, when he goes to that commune in Italy and in the ranch, it's entertaining. But I think, it would have been perhaps more interesting if the film would have just been, been a bit more open, I guess, about, this is the Manson family, it's the Manson murder family, because that way for, people who don't necessarily know what's happening with it, they can be like, oh, so that's what it is, that makes sense. And it kind of, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, the thing is, he did that with Hitler, of course, in Inglourious Basterds, like we already said. But everybody knows about Adolf Hitler. Everybody knows that. I would hope everybody knows he committed suicide, that he didn't actually die like that. I would think that's probably common knowledge, I would hope. But yeah, obviously, like what happened in that movie, you could tell immediately that's all made up. You don't actually know that, they're actually doing alternate history. It could just be fiction.
That makes it very weird too, actually. Yeah, the fact that the decision to be like, hey, look, it's the Manson murders, but not like it. And it's
there's a reason. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, obviously, which we'll get into about the end of the golden age of Hollywood and all that. But yeah, I get why you did it. I just like, it's not obvious, and that does ruin your enjoyment of the movie to some extent if you don't know about it. But if you didn't know about it, like me. You mean, oh, that's interesting. Oh, look at that. Oh, they're actually... Oh, if only history had played out this way, eh?
Just out of interest, what do you think? I don't know if we're going to move on, but I just wanted to ask, what did you think in general from, I guess, an aesthetic or cinematic perspective about the ending just being so crazy? Did you? Because it. Obviously, the thing is, it's kind of what you're
Well, there's
used
two
to
things to
Quentin
talk
Tarantino
about.
films.
Are we going to talk about whether the alternate history angle was good or not? Just not about if you knew about it. Is it good? Is it a good decision? And I think that's a separate thing. Let's talk about that first. Is it a good decision to do alternate history? I mean, I don't really get the enjoyment out of it that much. There is a thing of like, oh, this would be fun if things went like this, but that's it. It's just like a gimmick, really. That's how I view it. And when Hitler died, it's like, oh, that would be nice, wouldn't it, if Hitler died? But he didn't. He didn't die like that. He committed suicide. So, I guess you have when Hitler died, it's like cathartic when he's being pumped full of bullets. And that's good and all. And I guess when the Manson murderers are getting smashed around by Brad Pitt, I guess it's cathartic considering you know what they did or what they were planning to do. But yeah, still, it's kind of like.
I think one of the issues is that like the Manson murders, as much as they are part of the big public conscious, they're more personal in a way that with obviously doing things with Hitler, everyone knows about Hitler, and Hitler's kind of just a part of like his crimes were against humanity itself, and therefore there's a fun in thinking like, what if he got killed? Whereas it's kind of like when you've just got a specific murder of a specific person, that sort of, or obviously I realized they killed I think they killed like 9 people.
They killed five. Yeah.
Okay, 5 people. I wasn't sure. Yeah, I knew it rhymed with I. But yeah, so they killed 5 people, which is like a good number. Well done them. But at the same time, it's not Hitler. It's not like obviously Hitler was really responsible when you take into account the fact he started World War II for like tens of millions of deaths. And even if you just restrict it to the people he liked.
So are you saying the satisfaction with Hitler is better?
Yeah, and also it's kind of like
it's more than just
like,
a gimmick, but this just feels more like a gimmick because it's just 5 people died.
Yeah, and the revenge fantasy is more like there, because the thing is with this, it's like at the end of the day, it did happen 50 years ago, as you already said, and over 50 years ago now. So it's kind of like that's one victim for every single decade since it's happened. It's like at that point, I feel like the significance has got to just have depreciated a bit. You're just like, I don't really have any investment in a revenge fantasy, or like I guess you can say revenge because obviously it's preemptive, but like a glorifying the deaths of these murderers when it's so long ago and not much happened. Whereas with Hitler, it's like, well, yeah, Hitler was an arsehole, so we can make revenge.
To be fair, I think those Manson murderers are also arseholes. To be honest,
like,
people, they're also arseholes. But yeah, Hitler was of course one of the most evil people ever.
Yeah. Hitler was a real jerk.
He was, and that's the thing. So I guess there is a difference there. The alternate history is more than just a gimmick. There, it's more satisfaction. This one, it just seemed like kind of a gimmick, even though of course they did horrible things. It's like 5 people compared to what Hitler was like, millions upon millions upon millions of people. There's not really a comparison to be honest. But anyway. But that's the thing, actually. Well, you could say not really a comparison, but of course we have to remember that Charles Manson did want to start a race war with his Helter Skelter plan. He wanted to. I think his thing was, this might be true, might not be true, but he wanted to blame black people for killing rich white people, and he was on LSD at the time. This is the whole other thing that this movie doesn't even touch, about how he was on LSD and was Charles Manson actually an asset, or not an asset, or being used by the CIA, and he was involved with the CIA, and there was he was doing LSD experiments, all that shit went on in the 60s, and that's stuff I've read about and I'm interested in. Again, I have a lot of knowledge on this, but yeah, go on.
They could have had, actually, like, it's weird because they could have had way more Manson in here. Like, you consider...
Yeah, he's just in one scene,
Yeah, it's just like, it's very obscure, I guess.
Charlie Day was originally going to play him, or they wanted Charlie Day out of Always Sunny, but he turned it down. So I guess that's the alternate ending thing. Again, it's in this movie, it's more of a gimmick than anything else, and it's kind of like, it's fun, we get it. If you understand, it's good, and the payoff is there, but it's not that big a payoff, essentially. So let's talk about the actual ending, because there's a lot of violence, Michael. There is a lot of violence, and of course, that's pure Tarantino. That's pure uncut Quentin Tarantino.
Yes.
Don't we love it, folks? Don't we love it? I do wonder. All the non-hippies obviously kill all the hippies, and I don't know if Tarantino was trying to say something there with that ending.
Hippies are pretty peaceful.
Well, here's the thing. Obviously, Brad Pitt's character Cliff, the stuntman, does all the fighting and the dangerous work, and then Rick gets a shot of him, flame throwing somebody who's not a threat to him, and it's like flashy, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and that, that was a kind of a callback to their jobs, and kind of a meta thing. I think for sure that was meant to happen. That's something that Tarantino put in. But was he also trying to say something else there, where the ending, because you contrast what happened in real life with these deranged, I don't know, maybe they're hippies. I don't know if you'd classify them as hippies, because like you said, hippies
I guess they're just
peaceful.
Cultists.
Yeah, cult. It's a cult. They're cult members. These cult members going in and murdering these these innocent people. One of them's 8.5 months pregnant. And you contrast that with what happened in this movie. It's the kind of ending that would have happened in old Hollywood movies that Rick Dalton starred in. Like the bad guys come in and they're gonna damage the injured people, and Rick Dalton's like, no, I'm gonna stop you. I'm gonna kill you, and and the good guys win in the end, and the bad guys, and in this instance, the 60s, the hippies were definitely the bad guys as well, because that's the thing, they are just called hippies a lot. Throughout the last scene, they're not called like cult members or weirdos, they're called hippies constantly, and the hippies are the ones that end up being killed, and Rick Dalton, the Western movie star, the guy who's a true American grit, all of that shit, he comes out on top. So I was wondering if Tarantino was doing something there as well. It was like this: if this was a movie set in the 1960s, that would be the ending to this whole situation as well. What do you think about that?
I think that's an interesting idea.
Was he going for that?
I don't
know.
I don't know. See, actually, the thing about Quentin Tarantino is I do think Quentin Tarantino, at least consciously, I think he'd probably say that he tries not to really have that many messages in his films. But obviously there can be, I guess it depends how you define a message. I think the idea of like concepts and introducing those concepts is
not really a message though.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, this is what happens. It could be a message overall, as this was what happened with this counterculture era going against like the people of Rick Dalton. Eventually the hippies, did come off worse to the likes of Rick Dalton, but I don't think he's going that far, I guess. So I don't think, maybe saying something would be taking it too far. But he's certainly, there's certainly a possibility he's doing that again. With the old Hollywood movies that Rick Dalton comes out on top, and it could be that, or maybe it's just that these people are evil. Let's flamethrower them. Violence is fun. When Brad Pitt's, I mean, it's so fun. You enjoyed the ending, right, Michael?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I did. It's interesting because obviously it's less violent than a lot of his other films. And it's less violent overall. But then that final scene is very brutal. I think, it's actually kind of funny because there's obviously a lot of cartoon violence, but I do think the scene of the woman getting like her head just like smashed in is one of the more, I guess, I can't think what the word is, but like when something is almost so graphic that it's like almost disturbing, which is very rare for a Quentin Tarantino film, because usually they're just it's just pure like over the top fun. But that is the only moment I can think of where it felt, I guess raw is the term, because obviously like it's just like smash or when, but the thing is, even then I felt like they have this over the top cartoon thuddy sound effect, so it is, in that sense, is classic Tarantino. But I would say it's probably I don't know if it is just because the film didn't have as much violence up until that point, but I really do want to say that it was, in terms of the effect, more violent than any other Quentin Tarantino film. Because there's lots of other Quentin Tarantino films that have technically more violence, more over-the-top violence, but in a way, the over-the-topness of the violence makes it less impactful. This, I would say, was the film that I came out of it thinking the most, like, of all the Quentin Tarantino films, I go like, I would, if I was somebody who was squeamish about violence, this would probably be my least favorite Quentin Tarantino film. Because like the other films, I'd be like, it's violence, but it's cartoony. This film was just like really brutal. But obviously, from our perspective, from my perspective, somebody who's not particularly bothered by violence, I enjoyed it. Yes.
Yeah, and I liked it. When she's just getting her head banged against the fireplace, like, I think it was. Yeah,
it makes like a squelch sound.
It's great. It's because it's fun. It is.
Yeah, also, actually, you do get to see a dog protecting their master, which I think is always very nice.
Oh yeah, when the dog bites his penis.
Man's best friend.
Yeah. So let's go into I guess why this movie was made now, because we focused a lot on the plot and the ending, and I guess to sum up, for the first 2 hours, it's kind of just examining Hollywood, the characters, the era, and then in the last half an hour, things are set in motion, and then finally in the last like 15 minutes, you actually get some action going. So, Michael, why did Quentin Tarantino make this movie? Because, like we said, it's different, it's unique. And, of course, I think this phrase has been mentioned quite a lot with this movie, unsurprisingly. It is a love letter to 1960s Hollywood, or the golden age of Hollywood. I think it even says that on Wikipedia. You combine all of, Hollywood culture, all this iconography from that era, and put this into a movie, and I guess if I could view it from Quentin Tarantino's perspective, these were the days that Tarantino wished he was living in or just experienced. Like, looking back over, the history of film or TV in Hollywood in particular, he was like, yeah, I wish I was around here, and I will say it's cool to see somebody with a lot of passion and care recreate this era. You think about when all the restaurant lights flash on at night, for instance, like it's nostalgic, of course, maybe not for him, but for people who lived in that era, and it's like, throwback. Those were the days, hey? Those were the days, all these famous restaurants at night. And all the crazy stuff that was going on in Hollywood at the time in this fascinating period of history, it's rolled up into a movie, and you could argue it's the end of the golden age of Hollywood, so it's the end of when Hollywood was at its peak in terms of glamour and prestige. You've got all these famous old Hollywood figures, Steve McQueen, Bruce Lee as well. Although it's not necessarily realistic, maybe it's a fantasy version of the past, what he imagines it to be. But, that's fine, because, what else did you expect, to be honest? And, the period of time is being documented. And, it was a pretty famous time, the late 60s, Hollywood, all the stuff that was happening. So, yeah. Got anything else to say on that, Michael? I just appreciate that he went and did it.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I think this glorification of the past, it's quite a common thing in a lot of film directors. I say quite a common thing. The other person who famously does it is George Lucas. George Lucas, his whole thing, he loves to talk about how the idea of he takes all of these cues from the films that he watched growing up and the films that he loved watching, which are obviously mostly from the 40s and the 50s. And Quentin Tarantino, he takes lots of cues from the films he loved watching in the 60s and the 70s. Obviously the cowboy films, the blaxploitation films, things like that. So basically, in many ways, Quentin Tarantino and George Lucas are almost identical. And I will say, on that note, I find it tedious when a lot of people say, like, oh, George Lucas is actually a fantastic director and the prequels are great films, because the stilted dialogue is just like a reference to how the dialogue was kind of stilted back in the day. Or like, oh, it's good because this shot of, Coruscant is actually a reference to this shot of Metropolis in Fritz Lang's film, or something like that. And you just think, when that happens, I just think, oh, well, ultimately it's about the quality of the film. So with that in mind, obviously in this case I'm not saying like it's bad, but I will say that I'm not as on board with this whole like just all these directors masturbating over their childhoods and the media from their childhoods. I think it's quite a common thing, and frankly,
is it that common though? Have you ever,
well, actually, I don't know. Yes,
have you seen like a whole movie specifically about this era? Not really about anything. The first couple of hours, just really about it's Hollywood. You've got these different actors. Hollywood is changing and all of that. And at the start, what does Al Pacino say at the start? The movies that were being made, there's a lot of shooting and a lot of killing. And Tarantino, he probably loved that.
He loves it. Yeah. He loves.
And
I guess it's.
And then there's nothing wrong with if you just do it like once, like in this movie.
Yeah.
And I know and this specific period of time, I know Tarantino loves to go back throughout, history. Like, for example, I always think of that scene in Kill Bill when he's taking things from like Japanese movies, and that's fine. It's if you focus on like one particular period of time and keep doing it, that's when it becomes like, okay, right, we get it. But I haven't. Yeah, it was a fairy tale time for Tarantino at least, and and he views the Manson murders are integral, I think, because he views the Manson murders not. Imagine if they didn't happen. Imagine they didn't murder Sharon Tate. Maybe the period of time that Tarantino reveres could continue, and that's something that he obviously that's something fascinating, and it's something interesting to think about in that way. So I don't necessarily think he's just like masturbating over old stuff. He's it is an interesting time. It is an interesting time in Hollywood. It's like I said, it's the end of the classical era of Hollywood. Yeah, it's why wouldn't you want to make a movie about this specific period? I have to say, actually, I got a quote from somebody called Steve Pond of the Wrap, who says, who kind of agrees with you. Big, brash, ridiculous, too long, and in the end, invigorating. The film is a grand playground for its director to fetishize old pop culture. It's different. This is me saying. The film is a grand playground for its director to fetishize old pop culture. That's what he says, and I'm like, yes, okay, I guess so. He is kind of fetishizing it, but it's a, like I said, it's an important time. And the Manson murders were a pretty famous event, and also overall, it's when you specifically focus, on this period and trying to get everything in on it. It's different to fetishizing old pop culture, because like the point is it's this period of time, and that's overall as well. Just as a bigger point, it's different. We need different. Is there any other director that can make a movie like this apart from Tarantino that grosses that much money? Like we said at the start, I don't think so. So I am completely fine with him doing this, basically.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, I will say, like, I'm not against it. It's just, it's not. I guess I'll just say it's not something which I'm that as enthusiastic about celebrating. So it's not like I'm annoyed by it, but I'm kind of like, in a way, I will say it's almost like Quentin Tarantino has obviously been showing his love for this era in many ways throughout his filmography, and therefore it's kind of like this film. It does feel like, in a way, a culmination of his passion, because to a significant extent, yeah, you've been seeing like his harkening back to this period. Obviously, there's Django Unchained with the Western aspect, and then obviously there's literally basically a scene which is almost like Inglourious Bastards in this film, with reference to the idea of Rick Dalton. I feel like I've forgotten his name halfway through. It is Rick Dalton, isn't it? Killing all those Nazis. Like it's very obvious that a lot of you can take several of Quentin Tarantino's films and they almost converge on this one particular film, which I do think it is interesting. And it does make me think like, where's he going to go from here? Like what's his next big thing? Because obviously he, in many ways, I do think this does feel like the quintessential Tarantino film, and it does feel like it is going back to what he's already done. And yet at the same time, there is a part of me that's like, well, he's already paid homage to this period through his other work, which also functions as an extra story. There's something it very much reminds me of, which is a famous piece of fan fiction where the author writes a self-insert character who is like the author, but just slightly different. They've got like a slightly different but similar name. And then towards the end of the film, the author themselves shows up. And you sit there and you think, well, hold on a minute, you already had a character who was like the author, who was basically a self-insert character, and now you have the author themselves showing up. Isn't that a bit much? And that's kind of just my thoughts here. Like, you've already had these films that are paying homage to this period, and now you have a film which is literally just a homage to this period. Isn't that a bit much?
Well, I'd say, isn't it a bit much? Maybe it is a bit much, but the fact is that this movie was something that he was, of course, he was clearly passionate about, and he put a lot of effort into it, and it's cool to see. And if you don't want to see the movie, like, don't see it. You know what it's about, like from the get go. And I mean, that's the thing. I don't watch Tarantino movies constantly. It's like it's fine to watch this. It's good for a couple of watches maximum, like we kind of said at the beginning, and that's it.
Yeah.
Then
just out of interest, Luke. Obviously, see, I remember when The Hateful Eight came out, Tarantino had all these stipulations about how it was supposed to be played. Like, didn't he say like that he wanted it to be played with a proper film reel, and he wanted an intermission, and like basically he said all these things. Did he do anything like that with this film?
No,
because I'm just wondering. It seems like
so. No.
Okay, I was just wondering because I could imagine being like he wants to play like some shorts, like some cartoon shorts from the '60s, like beforehand or something like that.
I mean, just think, by the way, the production design is incredible. It's
just
absolutely incredible. The amount of and
it looks like the past.
It literally, like, the streets upon streets, of just it looking like the 1960s. That's impressive. And yeah, you can say, oh, he's fetishizing, he's focused too much on this era, but like I don't expect him to go back to it after this, because this is, like you said, kind of a culmination, and he really nailed it. And yeah, I think
I'd like to see him produce something like radically different. I feel like people have been throwing around like this idea of like Quentin Tarantino producing something that's not like a Quentin Tarantino
Yeah.
film. Like, I feel like I've heard people say things like, oh, you should do like a sci-fi film or something like that. It would be, I'd like to see him after this, because yeah, like I said, like you say, it is a culmination of this, of how much nostalgia is in so many of his films. It would be interesting, yeah, if after this he was like, okay, yeah, I'm all nostalgia out. It's finally happened. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood took it all out of me, and now I'm gonna make something completely new. That would be interesting. I doubt it's gonna happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, and there is like the Manson murders, of course. They're not in it much, but they are an essential part. It is interesting. I mean, he clearly thought about the Manson murders in relation to the golden age of Hollywood ending. Like, what if that didn't happen? Could this period continue? So that's interesting.
I actually had one other thought, which I've been thinking about forever. No, basically, obviously, this is about the golden age of Hollywood ending. It's kind of interesting to me. I know this is that Roman Polanski, Sharon Tate was literally his wife, but it's kind of funny that Roman Polanski is involved in this film, because obviously you could make an argument that the sex scandal surrounding Roman Polanski was almost another harbinger of the death of classic Hollywood, because obviously this incredibly celebrated, like lots of people would probably say Roman Polanski, oh, he's a really great director, but in a contemporary context, you mentioned Roman Polanski, and those people go like, oh, you mean that guy who like had sex with an underage girl and then ran away to France?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Do you think there's any aspect of like...
it was already over, perhaps. Like by that point, it's already over.
Yeah.
That happened in 1973. And this happened in 1969. Like it's already done. Like I imagine, we know how famous the Manson murders are. Just imagine how much of an impact that would have had on Hollywood, and the whole of Los Angeles. It would have had a massive impact. Like, it's obviously people still know about it and read about it to this day. There's still books made about it. So yeah, I think that was probably it. But anyway, let's go now into I guess historical inaccuracies or accuracies. I don't want to be too harsh on him right from the get-go. Maybe he got some stuff right, Tarantino. Maybe it wasn't all made up. And of course, the thing is, when talking about this, there's a massive... I mean, historical inaccuracy is part of the point, I guess. And, well, can we really criticize him on this? Like we say, it would be stupid because, to say, oh, the Manson murders actually... It didn't go down like that. Obviously, yeah, that's the point. But we'll get into this anyway. Are you ready, Michael?
Yes.
Okay, so on August the 8th, 1969, Patricia Krenwinkel, Charles Watson, and Susan Atkins broke into Polanski's and Tate's house, leading to the murders of Tate, 8.5 months pregnant, Sebring Wojciech Frejowski, that's two names, Sebring, and then Wojciech Frejkowski, and Abigail Folger. In the film, they go to Tate's house to commit the murders, but instead end up breaking into Dalton's house after he interrupts them. Linda Kasabian went along that night, and she was the only family member with a valid driver's license, though she did not murder anyone and stayed outside the whole time. In the film, she also goes along but does not participate. Watson told his victims, "I'm the devil and I came to do the devil's business." In the film, he says it to Cliff Booth. In the film, Atkins convinces the others to seek revenge by killing Rick Dalton, star of TV westerns, since TV taught them to kill. It's fitting they killed the guy from TV. In real life, Manson family member Nancy Pittman said, "We are what you have made us. We were brought up on your TV. We were brought up watching Gunsmoke and Have Gun Will Travel." And Sandra Good said, "You want to talk about devils and demonic and immorals and evil? Go to Hollywood. We don't touch the evil of the world. We don't even skim it." So that's interesting. It appears that line from that woman in the car who's like, "Let's kill Rick Dalton," because he was killing everybody on TV, doesn't seem that far-fetched, which is nice. I like that. That's good. That makes sense. And so the next night, the same four, along with Leslie Van Houten, Manson, and Steve Grogan, drove to Leno and Rosemary LaBianca's house, murdering the couple. Afterwards, Manson directed Kasabian to drive to an apartment complex to commit more murders. Once there, Manson left the car alone, leaving the others to hitchhike back to Spain Ranch, whatever. In the film, it is Kasabian who drives off, deserting others. Watson says they can hitchhike back. Grogan was convicted of the murder of stuntman Donald Shorty C. on Spain Ranch, whom he repeatedly beat with a lead pipe. In the film, Grogan is instead beaten by stuntman Cliff Booth. So, bit of a difference there. I guess so obviously it's historically inaccurate, but there are bits and pieces like with the characters of Cliff Booth and Rick Dalton that Tarantino bits and pieces that were true, and he takes them and puts them into his movies. So it's not completely like made up out of nowhere. The motivation to go and kill Rick Dalton seems to be accurate. By the way, I just wanted you to know that. Did you know this? Apparently, Steve McQueen broke Charles Manson's nose. Did you know that?
Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah. Apparently, he did. So let's go into a bit more. So Charles Manson was convicted of the murders of Tate and 4 others, despite not being present, due to the theory presented by prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi. I hope I pronounced that right. That Manson was trying to instigate an apocalyptic race war, leaving only black Muslims and the family. I just think if this shit happened like nowadays, God, you'd like Fox News would have a fucking field day. Like,
yeah, it would be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, actually, well, until Charles Manson was found, apart, like then it's all explained. But if it, in that month when he wasn't found, they'd go absolutely wild with this. According to the theory, black Muslims would eventually look to Manson and family to lead them. According to members of the family, Manson referred to the race war as Helter Skelter. But musician and filmmaker Boots Riley criticized Tarantino's film for not portraying Bugliosi's Helter Skelter narrative or depicting the family as white supremacists. Yeah, they don't really go into it. That's the thing. I mean, because he wants it to be kind of a surprise at the end. I'm not you said, I'm not really sure why he didn't go into it, but yeah, it's like these people were really fucked up. And again, we're not even mentioning the whole CIA thing either. With the LSD Charles Manson had. According to the numerous members of the family, the Tate LaBianca murders were not perpetuated in order to start Helter Skelter, but as copycat murders mirroring that of Gary Hinman in an attempt to convince the police that the killer was still at large. So that's interesting. I don't know why.
So it's just a prank, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how accurate that could be. Also, where is this? Apparently, in his interview with Truman Capote, Bela Solil, I don't know how to pronounce that. It's a very foreign-sounding name, but basically, he said that they burned people on dope deals, Sharon Tate and that gang. So apparently it was because Manson was at Tate's house on the day before the murders to sell drugs to Sebring and Wojtek Flakowski, which resulted in the two beating Manson up. So it wasn't just a random killing because Manson knew somebody who used to live at that house. Drugs were involved, which would I guess make more sense, But yeah, who knows? That's the thing. This case is still so fascinating to this day, Michael. Still so fascinating. Will we ever get to the bottom of it? That is the question. What do you think?
No.
Great.
I mean, I think it's not like the JFK assassination. We probably still know more than we could.
Yeah.
We know enough.
Well, we're going to review JFK later this year from Oliver Stone.
Yeah.
So, we can.
Yeah, that's going to be really fun to get into conspiracy stuff.
Oh yes, we love it.
I think Lee Harvey Oswald was trying to steal the Jack Ruby.
Makes sense. So, also, we have to talk about Bruce Lee, Michael, because I was surprised about this. The film's depiction of Bruce Lee drew criticism. Fans and contemporaries of Lee criticised the portrayal, with Lee's daughter Shannon describing the description as an arrogant asshole who was full of hot air. Kareem.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, sorry, I was just saying, yeah, I can agree with that. I can understand why somebody would come away with that interpretation of his character.
Yes, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, with whom Lee trained and appeared in Game of Death, stated, "Of course, Tarantino has the artistic right to portray Bruce any way he wants, but to do so in such a sloppy and somewhat racist way is a failure both as an artist and as a human being." Interesting. Was it racist, the way he was portrayed? I would say racist, because I don't think...
Yeah.
I think he just seemed like a twat, basically. I don't think that's a stereotype that Asians are naturally twats.
I think there's like an idea that Asian people are quite short with others, so like, hey you, like they're kind of like,
I see, yeah.
So that's kind of, so I can see like the understanding idea of like he's like a jerk, but it's like he's a jerk in an Asian way. Because he's like, hey you, we fight now. I can't remember what he says.
Yeah, but he doesn't really say anything like that though, does he?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he could have been a white person and said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Mike Moe, who played Lee, said he was conflicted at first. Bruce, in my mind, was literally a god. Bruce didn't always have the most affection for stuntman. He didn't respect all of them. He stated Tarantino loves Bruce Lee. He reveres him. Brad Pitt objected to an extended version of the fight, saying, "It's Bruce Lee, man." So he didn't want to go any further. He was just like, let's cut it because, it's Bruce Lee. I can't fucking beat up Bruce Lee. Come on. That's interesting.
Yeah, like throwing him into a car when Bruce Lee is so iconic.
Yeah.
To just have him be like defeated by some I don't know, loser like Brad Pitt.
According to Lee's friend and the Green Hornet stuntman Gene LaBelle, Bruce Lee had a reputation for, quote, kicking the shit out of stuntmen. They couldn't convince him that he could go easy and it would still look great on film. So yeah, maybe again, you're taking a piece of truth and putting it into the movie. Bruce Lee's biographer Matthew Polly stated Bruce was very famous for being very considerate of the people below him on film sets, particularly the stuntman. So in the scene, Bruce Lee is essentially calling out a stuntman and getting him fired because he's the big star. So that's interesting. So apparently he had a lot of respect. That's what his biographer says, and this definitely wouldn't happen. But Tarantino responded saying Lee was kind of an arrogant guy. So, and that Lee's widow, Linda, wrote in Bruce Lee, the man only I knew. Apparently Bruce Lee said he knew he could beat Muhammad Ali. She wrote, even the most scathing critics admitted that Bruce's gung fu was sensational. One critic wrote, those who watched him would bet on Lee to render Cassius Clay senseless if they were put in a room and told anything goes. So
that would have been a really good fight.
I know. It's like the Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather of the day, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully that fight would be better than that one, though, I just mentioned. In 1972, Lee himself stated, everybody says I must fight Ali someday. Look at my hand. That's a little Chinese hand. He'd kill me. So what do you think of that?
I mean, overall, I think ultimately it is a minor thing because he's literally just in like one scene. I can understand, I can totally understand why people would be bothered by it because, I mean, I would say the main thing, like my perspective would be, I guess there is an extent to which he is a bit arrogant, and obviously, you know, in the film he's a bit of a jerk, and you know, I can understand people not wanting him to be shown that way, especially like because, you know. Well, that's the thing. But it seems like there's a big debate over it, and then also there's the fact that he does get beaten and in a way almost kind of shown up by Brad Pitt, which I can imagine people objecting to. Overall, I would say it's a bit strange. It doesn't in any way ruin the film for me, but I suppose I would say, you know, that I think it would have been better if they hadn't done that and would have treated Bruce Lee with a bit more respect. Like Brad Pitt said, you know, it's Bruce Lee. The classic.
He's always right. Goat. He's always right, isn't he, Brad Pitt? Okay, Michael, I think it's time to conclude. I'm going to go first this time, contrary to what happens most of the time. So I'd say with this Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's a different movie. It's a unique and weird movie considering its financial success. But I just sit back and think, isn't that great? Isn't that great that this kind of this art, I guess, is the best way to say it, has been, you know, put on the screen and millions of people have seen it. It's ranked in millions of dollars. Isn't that wonderful? Instead of, I know in the Red Letter Media review they kept talking about Marvel movies, or just any movie like this, you know, the sequels that everyone knows comes out every year in abundance. You know, it's unique, and yes, of course, it is based on events that, you know, happened. But you know, it's still it's like I say, it's different, man. It's different to what, you know, you see peak at the box office most. I think it got up to number 2, but yeah, almost peak at the box office in most. In the height of summer, it's different. So I like that. And of course, you could say, Tarantino's fetishizing stuff. You know, he's like, really, do we need to have him slobber all over the 1960s again? But like, he there's such dedication to this. He's clearly so passionate about this, and he loves it. And it's hard to really knock somebody for doing that. It really is. And you know, there's the overall theme, like I said, of the ending of the golden age of Hollywood and the Manson murders as well coming in, and you know that. The Manson, I think, you know, the switch up is a bit of a gimmick, but yeah, overall, I like that. Can't this era just continue? Can't this fantasy version of Hollywood just continue? Those murders never happen, and things just keep on going as they have been. Isn't that wonderful? And yeah, that's something I can appreciate him thinking. So yeah, I do appreciate this movie, and I have to say it's not going to be rewatched, but I have to say I'm not probably going to rewatch it, but I'm glad I did watch it. And I think for me, an 8 out of 10, Michael, that's a fair score for this movie. 8 out of 10 for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Okay. Overall, I don't have as much to say about this film as you. Like, I think you pretty much covered it with regards to the fact that it's a unique, interesting film. I will say, I guess the thing is that it does need to be pointed out, there are plenty of other interesting films that are out there. The main thing about this film, the significant thing about this film, is that it was a film that was very successful, considering how, I guess, unconventional it was. But at the same time, from the perspective of somebody who is able to access plenty of unconventional films, because, you know, you don't have to worry about what the box office, you know, the big films at the box office. It's not something which is like a massive priority in my view. Overall, I would say that the main things which I like about this film are just that it's an entertaining film for being a film that doesn't have much of a plot. It is quite entertaining to watch the film, watch the characters just chill. And overall, there is some fun in the big action scene at the end. Having said that, I do think it would have been nice, considering that the film does deal with quite an interesting topic, obviously the Manson murders, if they would have lent into that a bit more and actually explored that aspect a bit more. Like I already said, I don't find the alternative history angle particularly compelling, because I think ultimately I'm not that invested in the defeat of the Manson family, because it was a long time ago. And the main thing is that I don't. Well, the thing is, there's not much I don't like. That's the key thing. There's not. I'm not sat there thinking like, oh, I don't like that. Yeah. The main question is, I guess, what is there that I do like? And obviously, one of the things which you would have to be liking if you were to enjoy it would be the homages, the aspect of it is, really. It sounds weird to say this, it's like a send-off to the 60s. Obviously, the 60s are a long time ago. A send-off to that golden age of Hollywood.
I feel like he's just like documenting stuff, really. It's unrealistic to a point, of course, because, it's like a fairy tale version, like you said, but also it's kind of not, because, like, that's the thing about Hollywood. It's like the fairy tale is real life. That's the kind of thing about it. And, it's fascinating. It's the Manson murders. It literally, it happened to like movie stars. O.J. Simpson was
that is interesting.
Was the trial of the century, of course, and that will probably never be beaten. But this, murders in Hollywood, these famous young actors getting cut down. I mean, just before they're about to become stars. In the case of Sharon Tate, that's one of the most famous serial killers, and the most, with all these famous stars living around them. I mean, that's what else is that apart from very interesting? And he documents that fascinating period of time pretty well. So there you go.
But yeah, anyway, regarding the actual rating, I'll just I will say for me, the film it lacks a certain rewatchability that I'd need to give it an 8. I'm probably going to give it I will say, like, I'm not a huge fan of Tarantino in general. I don't just, like I said, I don't think he's ever made a bad film, but I'm not like somebody who thinks all of his films are 10 out of 10s. I don't even know if I'd say most of them are 9 out of 10s. I'm not sure, but I will say that I think I prefer his habit of making films that are actually homages to these old classics in a way where they actually tell the story. I almost died there, rather than just showing it. But ultimately, I think this film's nice. I'm going to say that I will put it. I think I'm going to give it a low-ish 7, not insanely low. But, and for me, I will say that the main reason, if there's one reason, it's because I don't think this film is that rewatchable, because I'm just like, I saw it and it was fine. But with that said, I'm going to put it above Psycho and below The Usual Suspects. Okay. So there we go.
Well, I guess I really like the fact that these events have been kind of like documented, or I guess they're already immortalized.
You know what, Luke? Watch a documentary, bruh.
Yeah, I know. But it's the thing, like, documentaries don't gross $374 million. Yeah, and it's nice. It's nice to see this stuff, and it's interesting. It is. You do love to see it. You do love the violence at the end. It's great. You love to see it. So, Michael, what are we doing next week?
Very similar film, almost identical, you might say. Little Women.
Yes, Little Women. The last movie I saw, that was Parasite. There's the second last movie I saw before the pandemic happened. But yeah, thanks for listening. We've been selecting and reflected on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was it. Once upon a time, all this shit happened, and Tarantino put it down in a movie, and there you have it. Well done to him. Join us next week for Little Women. Who've been Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.